And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome along to the Sha Tin Racecourse for our special live webcast of the Audemars Piguet QEII Cup for 2016 Trackwork this morning here on a Thursday morning. I'm Brett Davis, joined by John Blance, and Edward Sadler will be joining us along very shortly. He's roaming around this morning, having a chat with all of the international guests that are on course. But John, we've got some terrific mornings ahead of us and some star-studded horses on show.
We have indeed, yeah. The first horse making his way down now, and the sun's come out right on cue as well. It was a bit dull this morning when I was catching the bus, but it's just got out now. So
yes, good to see the sun about. We haven't seen it for quite some time. Let's focus firstly on our first horse that is making his way down, and judged by the headgear, I'm tipping that this is going to be one of the Japanese horses, and it looks like Nuovo Record, who of course was here on International Week and ran a magnificent race behind A. Shin Hikari in the Cup. How did you assess her chances, John? I think she's got a great chance judged on that performance.
A very strong chance. It's still one of those races you have to kind of rub your eyes in disbelief to see the way that Shin Hikari won that day, those sectionals that he posted. And Nuovo Record was about the only one who didn't need oxygen at the end of those in behind that didn't need oxygen at the end of the race. She was staying on really well, did a really good last sectional, closed off nicely. Just a question of whether they get a similar sort of run race this time round.
Yeah.
Because that might have been, I suppose, just slightly flattering for her in the sense that she really relished that pace, but she beat some good horses in behind.
Certainly, and the form stood up, of course, with Lucia Valentino winning the big race in Sydney over the championships, and Lucia Valentino herself ran a terrific race, finishing in 5th position, but Nuovo Record was basically running alongside of her in the race and then was able to edge clear and go on and beat her by a couple of lengths. So it's a solid form reference. Looking at the schedule for this morning, as we can see, Nuovo Record has made her way out onto the turf track, and she's getting into full stride now. Rising Romance for Australia is expected to work on the turf this morning as well, along with the other two Japanese horses, Lovely Day and Satono Crown. Urtajal will be working on the all-weather, as far as we understand, and Highland Real also working on the all-weather. So that's the situation at this stage regarding the schedule for the horses this morning here on this Thursday at Sha Tin. As John mentioned, the sun is out. It's quite a warm morning, and the humidity certainly back in the air as we have a look at Nuovo Record picking up stride.
Yep, she's enjoying herself there down the far side. She has run since that run in the Longines Hong Kong Cup back in December, and it was a 6th place finish in a Group 2 race back in Japan over the 2,000 metres. The general consensus, though, was that was a bit of a pipe opener for this. She'd had a bit of time off the track since December, and I think she's going to be pretty much fully tuned up for this. And as I said before, a reproduction of that run from December would see her go very close indeed.
And it'll be a great thrill as well for her trainer, Makoto Sato, who's pretty much a sort of a young trainer in the JRA. I mean, he's been around for a few years, but only had the 2 Group 1 winners. He had a winner overseas in Korea not long ago. It was about 12 months ago now, and brought Nuovo Record here in December. She ran a great placing, but what a marvellous achievement it would be for Makoto to pick up an international Group 1 here in Hong Kong.
It certainly would be, and it looks like he's very keen to support the racing here as well, which is good news for us. And yeah, I think she's got a good chance. Of course, as we said before, she was the Oaks winner back in Japan a couple of seasons back, and it has been a little while since she's actually got a score on the board in terms of victories. But the form since her last win back in March 2015 has been pretty solid. And as I said before, the run here in December was excellent.
Yeah, she's got the ears flicking around there as she works up towards the home stretch. She worked on the all-weather track on Monday morning, and then on Tuesday did some work in the trotting ring, followed by an easy canter on the turf. But she's having a solid hit out this morning, as you can see, coming down towards the 250-metre point. And I like the way she's moving here. As we discussed before, John, the pace of the race is probably not going to be there. I mean, there's no A. Shin Hikari in the contest on Sunday. No real noted leader, so that could potentially slightly go against her, but she's high quality, no doubt. And I do remember Ryan Moore making a strong comment about her after her second placing in the big race back in December. He he thought that her rating was a little bit low. He thought that the ratings she had at the time was not right, suggesting that he's got a fairly high opinion of her.
Yep.
He won't obviously be aboard on the weekend, but he'll be realising that she's one of the dangers.
Yeah, Yutaka Taki, Mr. Eishin Hikari will be aboard,
Yes.
so he's got the chance to ride her this time. But yeah, Ryan Moore rides a lot in Japan now, and he'll have a very good handle on the Japanese form book. So I would certainly take what he says very seriously.
Yeah, he certainly spoke highly of her following the second placing behind Shin Hikari. So she's basically had just the one lap. By the looks of it, new OVO record. Apparently she's arrived fit, as John touched on before. She's just had the one run back in the Osaka High, where she finished a nice 6th behind Ambitious. And I think she really, what is she now? She's a 5-year-old, so she's probably got the best racing ahead of her, no doubt. She's reaching the peak of her powers, you would have thought, physically, and obviously a very mentally mature mare, be able to travel and cope with all of that. And she's certainly picked up a little bit, I think, since she's arrived here. She's like most, John. She likes to get away and travel a little bit, and
Well,
who could blame her?
Indeed. Well, it's not, and it's not the biggest trekker course from Japan to Hong Kong, and the Japanese horses go well here. And yep, she seems to have resettled herself back in here very nicely after her exploits here in December.
Yeah, well, if you've been watching us through the live webcast this morning or tuning in, you would have seen that piece of work from Nuovo Record if you managed to have the pictures. If you were just listening, it was certainly a nice piece of work. So she looks to be going along just lovely for the big race on Sunday, Nuovo Record. And she'll be winding down now and heading back towards the stabling area very, very shortly. We move from Nuovo Record now on to Satono Crown, who certainly comes here with a fairly decent rap. We've only seen him very briefly, and there he goes. Yep. He's disappeared already. So some light exercise for him this morning. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not he comes back out onto the turf. But decent raps, and he's got solid form. A young horse. It's his first overseas experience, so a little bit of a test. But he's obviously been feeling well. He hasn't been able to get out too much, but we'll hopefully see him a little bit later on again this morning.
Yeah, he's just had the 7 career starts as well, so there's a bit of improvement to come. The slight concern for me is that he's just been a little bit found wanting in the Group 1 races he has contested so far. He's won at a lower level, but he's yet to score at Group 1 level.
Yeah, no doubt. Clearly his biggest test, but the trainer's got some decent horses in his stable, and I doubt he would have brought him along. Right, we've got Ertagel on screen, and he's about to get into his work. He's scheduled to go onto the all-weather, so we'll keep an eye on Ertagel. But right now we're going to introduce Edward Sadler to the live webcast this morning, and he's downstairs with a familiar face here in Hong Kong for many years. Mark Player, Edward.
Thanks for that, Brett. Yeah, Mark, great to have you in town. Of course, you play a big part in getting all these international horses over. What are your thoughts on the lineup for this year's QE2?
Oh, look, it's great to be back. I think the club as a team has done an amazing job to get the quality of horse we have here. The QE2 Cup's always been a race that's been, positioned where it is in the calendar. It's a challenge sometimes to get some of the very best horses, but this year the club has, and I'm sure that our sponsor Audemars Piguet will be absolutely delighted with the quality of horse here. To get 3 Japanese horses in 20 races is fantastic, but to get 3 absolute top quality horses that perform at Group 1 level is a real thrill, and the supporting cast from elsewhere is just as strong.
We're seeing Ertagel on screen, of course, performed in Dubai, and Grade 1 winner in South Africa prior to coming over here. Great to have Mike de Kock's team back in town.
Look, it is. It's fantastic to have Mike back in town, but even more satisfying to have Sheikh Hamdan bin Rashid and my team having his first runner here for, I think, 9 years. One of the world's leading owners, and to see him bring one of his very best horses is a thrill. And Ertagel is a horse that was really finishing on well in Dubai over the 1800. I think the 2,000 metres will suit him here. I know that Trevor Brown, who's travelled with him, is really thrilled with the way he's progressed from Dubai. So to have one of the world's leading trainers and one of the world's leading owners coming back is just a real thrill.
And you'd alluded to the 3 Japanese horses here. Are they the ones to beat in the QE2?
Look, on exposed form, you'd have to say so. But every time you travel horses, it's a new challenge. And even though a horse like Nouveau Record has been here before and run so well in December, that doesn't mean to say she's going to do it again. But if you look at her, physically she's made improvement from last December. And I know that they were very, very happy with the first run back. So, change of jockey to Yutaka Take, one of the best Japanese riders probably ever. He's sitting on her and he's very, very keen on her chances. So, you couldn't put a line through her in any way, shape or form. You'd expect her to go well. But Satona Crown, an up-and-comer, and then Lovely Day, who, of course, on exposed form is the best of them. So a thrill to have. Any of those horses would have been a thrill to have, but to get all three of them in 1 year, I think, is just exceptional and a real reflection on the great teamwork from the club to make it all happen.
And of course, hopefully we'll get to speak to you closer to the time. But next week, the Chairman's Sprint Prize and the Champions Mile both look outstanding races. Yeah, look, the Champions Mile is a race we've been working on for many years to really increase the quality. I think having Maurice back to defend a title in Hong Kong is fantastic. And then for the Sprint in its first real year as an international to attract 3 outstanding Group 1 winners that we have is I think, a dream come true for all in the club. And again, it speaks volumes for how the club has been able to really pick up an opportunity and run with it and, turn Sha Tin into this international day that's going to be on the 1st of May. So really thrilled with both race days. And let's hope we have both a strong home defence but a wonderful international challenge to see the very best of all the horses. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck over the next week or so, Mark.
Thanks, Edward.
Thank you to Edward Sadler there speaking to Mark Player. Yes, always great to see Mark back here in Hong Kong, and as he's touched on already, it's a terrific race coming up on the weekend. It's a terrific fortnight, which is now down to 10 days, of course, and the build-up continues. What do you make of Ertedal, John? Is he up to the task at this stage of his career?
I think it's a slight question mark. He's obviously a very good horse. You don't win the races he's won in South Africa. The Cape Derby was the last race he managed to win there. And then, of course, he's been globe-trotting ever since. Mike de Kock, who is no stranger to globe-trotting. He sent horses all around the world to win big prizes. Douglas White, good ride for him as well. Yeah, he's not won since the 31st of January 2015, so it's comfortably over a year now. But it was a decent run in Dubai last time. And I think a lot of these horses, the barrier draw that we're going to be getting at lunchtime is going to be interesting. If he could draw a decent gate, that would enhance his chance. But I think as far as the form in the book is concerned, I think he's got a little bit to find with 1 or 2 of the others.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but he does get his opportunity, doesn't he, to stand up. I thought he stood up fairly well in Dubai as well when finishing in 4th position behind Real Steel. And as touched on before, it's great to have a runner for Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum here in Hong Kong. He hasn't had a runner here for many, many years, and Mike de Kock hasn't been here since Variety Club in 2014. So great to have them both back. And he's got some scope, this guy. I like him. I'm very interested to see where he does draw because he's tactically versatile. We've spoken about the potential lack of pace. So if he can draw well, then there's the likelihood that he'll be racing in the first 4 or 5, and that could be just perfect on race day. Yeah,
and he's got a good record at the trip. 2,000 metres is probably his best trip. He's a winner of 2 of his 3 starts over the 2,000. So I think, yeah, it'll be. He's an interesting contender. As I said before, he's not quite necessarily at the level of a Designs on Rome or a Lovely Day, but no reason to suggest that he won't be. And yeah, as you say, the draw will be important. Just stretching his legs a little bit further now as he makes his way down the side of the track.
Yeah, well, he's just on the all-weather track this morning, as you say, just some light exercise for him. He's obviously, like a lot of the horses that arrive here, already fit and ready to go. It's just a matter of keeping them ticking over. He had some work on the turf on Monday and also galloped on the turf under Douglas White on Tuesday too. So just some light exercise for him this morning, working down the home stretch here on the all-weather track at Ertedal. And we've just seen Nuovo Record. She's finished her work already this morning. We saw her first up, and she's basically done and dusted for the morning. So she'll head to the shower now and freshen up as Ertedal finishes his first lap on the all-weather and is going to continue through and go on to do another one. Satono Crown, we touched on him before. He just came out very briefly for a little bit of a walk around, and he's now disappeared. So we'll keep our eye and see whether or not he's going to reappear. We've got a couple of the other gallopers now heading out onto the track from the international stabling area, and we'll focus on those in the not too distant future. All right, so there we go. Ertedal winding up proceedings. We can now move to Highland Real, who's made his way out onto the all-weather track, a horse that needs no introduction to Hong Kong here in December. Beautifully ridden, and a big day for Aidan O'Brien, taking out the Hong Kong Vase with Highland Real, who's only had the one run since, but ran with credit.
Certainly did, yeah, in Dubai behind Postponed. It was a pretty good effort. Postponed has turned into one of the top racehorses in the world. He won very comfortably in Highland Real. There's no disgrace in finishing fourth to him. And yeah, he was very impressive when he beat Flincher to score here. Of course, that was Aidan O'Brien's first ever victory in Hong Kong as well. So another box ticked for his phenomenal training career. And yeah, you couldn't help but be impressed by the way he won. I thought Flincher gave his running on that occasion, but he was just beaten by a better horse on the day. And no surprise they decided to come back with him. You were talking about horses travelling, and Mark Player was talking about horses travelling and whether they can cope with that. Well, this fellow certainly can cope with the departure lounges and the and then all that stuff, because he's had no problems at all globe trotting. He's been to the States, he's won there. He's been to Australia, he's come here, and then he's gone to Dubai, and he just seems to take it all in very nicely without batting an eyelid. The future is very bright for him. It's still just a 4-year-old.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the real key, isn't it? Still just a 4-year-old with all this experience on the travel side of things, coping with those things that he needs to deal with when he arrives in other countries, along with, you know, getting on and off a plane and so forth. He's a little warm this morning, as you can see, but it is very humid here this morning in Hong Kong. It's currently about 27 degrees. The humidity is right up near 90 to 95%, and he's got himself a little bit warm this morning, Highland Real. 2,000 metres for the Audemars Piguet QEII Cup. Of course, the Vase was 2,400, and last start in Dubai, 2,400 as well. We know he's got great form over the 2,000, but how do you see the 2,000 on Sunday with the situation with regards to his form over his previous efforts?
Well, that's why he's probably not going to be the on-top selection for me. I think he's got to be a horse you've got to consider for your numbers. His 2000 form is interesting. I mean, he went to the States and won the Secretariat Stakes, but it wasn't a particularly strong renewal of that race over the 2,000 metres. And then he was a bit disappointing in the Irish Champion Stakes back home, of course, for him at Leopardstown back in September, when he was fifth on that occasion. That's over 2,000 metres too. So I think probably he's a type of horse to probably come back for the Vase in December, and he'll be pretty tough to beat. But if they go at pace, he'll be okay, and he's obviously versatile enough to have coped with the drop back to 2,000 metres in the past.
There he is, completing his work, coming down towards the winning post, and now working out of the stretch again on the all-weather track, Highland Real. Now, we've got some of the other horses gallivanting around. Rising Romance has made her way out onto the turf track. And we've also got Erdajal now completing his work. So we've got plenty happening, and there's quite a few other horses as well that have now made their way out onto the surface of the all-weather, including Mongolian Saturday, who's, of course, preparing for the Chairman's Sprint Prize. All right, let's go downstairs again to Edward Sadler, who's catching up with many people this morning. Edward.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brett. I've got Trevor Brown with me, the assistant to Mike de Kock. Of course, they've got Erdajal out here. Trevor, welcome to Hong Kong. How's Erdajal?
No, good, thank you. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, very good. Very happy with him. He's an easy going horse, so I'm not too worried about his well-being at the moment. He's settled in nicely.
He had a gallop earlier this week with Douglas Wyatt on board, and he's worked this morning. You happy with what you've seen on the track this week?
No, definitely. He's moving well. He's eating well. He's going to have another piece on the turf tomorrow, just a little stretch over 4 furlongs. He's a big burly horse, so we'd just like to keep him moving a bit. And that will be it.
Of course, he's had that Dubai campaign this year. How much have you had to do with him to keep him where he needs to be fitness-wise?
Once a week. I mean, he went into World Cup night pretty fit, so it was just a matter of just topping up after that.
Fitness-wise, of course, he must be pretty good, but form-wise, how do you assess him against these sort of horses that he's going to be competing against on Sunday?
Well, you know, the Dubai, the World Cup run wasn't a bad field at all, and I think he did well in that race, running on. We're obviously going to have to be a bit closer in this field, but I think he's up to it, yes.
Draw-wise, we've got the Barry draw coming up today. Ideally, if you could choose, where would you like to see him draw?
4 to 7.
Good luck on Sunday.
Thanks.
Trevor Brown there. Brett?
Thanks, Edward. Yes, great to hear from Trevor. We've got Rising Romance getting into full swing now, heading off the back of the course at around the 700 metre point. She looks to be moving lovely this morning, John. What have you made of her?
Yeah, it's good to have such good fillies running in this race, isn't it? And yeah, she's looking as though she's enjoying herself out there, just stretching her legs. She's a winner of 5 of her 29 races. She's quite well tried at Group 1 level as well. She's only won the one of them, the Australian Oaks, back in 2014, but she's run very well, and she comes here off the back of a decent 4th place finish there in the Queen Elizabeth Stakes at Randwick, and then prior to that she'd been running pretty well in both the Australian Cup and the Group 1 BMW race there in Australia too, over 2,500 metres. 2,000 metres distance, again, she's been pretty consistent at this level. I think she's one that you've got to consider for the numbers.
Absolutely, I think she arrives in terrific form. I think her CV suggests that her best racing might be ahead of her. She's a 5-year-old mare now, so she's probably at the peak of her powers. The statistics of the Audemars Piguet QEII Cup are against her a little bit. There's only been one lady to have won the race in all the runnings, and of course Iridescence is the horse I refer to, back in 2006. So she's got that little stat against her, as does Nuovo Record. But she, as you say, I mean, she's only had the one Group 1 win in the Australian Oaks, but she's been placed on many occasions in many big races. So I'm very interested to see how she performs, and Damien Lane no doubt will be very excited to be aboard her come Sunday. So she's done a decent hit out this morning on the turf, and now easing up to walk back towards the stabling area. We've got quite a few horses sort of moving around the track now. We just saw briefly Mongolian Saturday. Of course, no stranger to Hong Kong as well. I thought he ran with credit in the sprint on International Week back in December. And for Australian fans, it looks like we're getting a glimpse of the world's #1 sprinter out on the all-weather track as well at the moment. Chautauqua, of course, has only just arrived here not that long ago, and he's now doing a little bit of work on the all-weather track, and we'll get the cameraman to zoom in on him very, very shortly. But there is a Mongolian Saturday. As was the case in December, John, I think he's got to run a career best if he's going to be featuring in the sprint race. I mean, the international sprint in December was a top quality event, but I tend to think that the Chairman's Sprint Prize has just got that little more quality in it.
Yeah, he's not going to find it easy, but you have to take out of the connections for coming back, and they obviously enjoyed their experience here back in December. He ran well as well. Of course, a lot was made of the fact that American horses all go left-handed, have to come right-handed here in Hong Kong. But he seemed to take the bends well, and his 5th place finish did him plenty of credit, and I don't see why he can't not necessarily win the big Chairman's Sprint Prize in a couple of weeks' time, but I don't see why he can't run a similar sort of race, and again run with a good deal of credit.
So yes, just some light work for him this morning. Now I can tell you with regards to Chautauqua, he's just done basically a half a lap on the all-weather track. He's now eased up, and he's heading back in the left-handed direction. And we'll get a look at him very, very shortly. But on screen now is, well, on exposed form, as Mark Player said before, probably the horse to beat from Japan, Lovely Day. He's a lovely horse. Hopefully it'll be a lovely day for racing on Sunday. And if he brings his A game, I think he's the one to beat.
Yep, I can't necessarily argue too much with that. He's certainly going to be there or thereabouts. He racked up 4 wins in succession back in the summer of 2015. Was 4th last time out in preparation for this, the same race, incidentally, that Nuovo Record ran in as well. But it was his form towards the back end of last season as well. This was still in very, very solid in the context of this. Of course, he won the Tenno Show, and then he was 3rd in the Japan Cup in a really active finish to that race back in November. I was burning the midnight oil watching that race the other night, and he came there in the final sort of 100 metres. He looked like the winner, and then of course he was just done in the latter stages by Shonen Pedora. But yeah, he's got to have a very solid chance. It's great to have him here, and on the basis of the form that we've got in the book, he is just about the best horse here. And a bloke called Moreira's riding him. I've heard he knows his way around here quite well.
Can't recall him actually, Joe Moreira. Yeah, no, he's going all right, isn't he? There's no doubt about that. It's interesting that the Japanese connections have called on Joe with the knowledge of Hong Kong racing. A little bit keen this morning, as we can see there, for Lovely Day, but yes, outstanding form. It is his first overseas experience, so there's a little bit for him to take in, but as you touched on before, it's not a huge trip, is it, from Japan to Hong Kong. They were very pleased with his first up run as well, behind Ambitious in the Osaka High, where he finished fourth. Nuovo record finished in sixth position. If you take a line through Shonen Pandora, who won the Japan Cup, there's not a great deal between Lovely Day and Nuovo record. Both Lovely Day and Nuovo record have been very competitive against Shonen Pandora, and there hasn't been great margins between the two. So it's going to be interesting. I guess what he's got in his favour is that he can probably race a touch handier, as opposed to Nuovo record, who's likely to get a little bit further back, and with the lack of pace that we sort of foresee in the race, that may be a slight advantage for him. But let's hope he can draw well. If you're looking at the stats on the barrier draws, of course, it's a tricky dispatch point here at Sha Tin, the 2,000 metres. If you draw barrier 14, things don't read too well for you. No horses even placed in the first three, drawing barrier number 14 over the 2,000 metres in this event. So Connections will be hoping they don't pull that marble.
No, absolutely. There'll be a few nervous people at the draw at lunchtime. Mark Richards, of course, in charge of that. But yeah, as you say, you've got to get to that bend over the 2,000 metre track in a good position. And if what we think happens does happen, i.e. there's not going to be a great deal of pace. And it's interesting from a pace angle. There aren't any obvious leaders, but there are quite a few horses who like to go forward. It's just a question of whether one or two of those horses will sort of turn into out-and-out leaders for the purposes of Sunday. So that'll be interesting. But certainly, if this fella draws a good gate, he's going to go, I would have thought, pretty much to the top of the market.
He's a lovely stamp of a horse, as you can see him now working down the stretch. A 6-year-old now. A little bit keen, as we saw in that early stages of his piece of work this morning, but he's settling in well there, moving lovely, stretching out well, and he looks certainly cherry ripe to go. Now, just with regards to Chautauqua, it's been pretty light for him this morning. By the looks of it, he's done probably half to three-quarters of a lap of the all-weather in a slight easy gallop, and then that's it. He's turned around, and it looks like now he's going to head back towards the stabling area. So that's the situation with Chautauqua, and Lovely Day has also now completed his work. So we've seen Highland Reel, we've seen Lovely Day, we saw Satono Crown very briefly. He was scheduled to work on the turf, but has not done so. Just a slight little bit of walking for him this morning. Ertajau, we've had a good look at him. We saw Nuovo record before, and Rising Romance, we saw her kicking up her heels down the back stretch some 4 or 5 minutes ago. Nice piece of work for her. She's got a little bit of a love affair going on with buffering, by all reports. We haven't seen buffering out this morning, but we might see him in the not too distant future. But yes, the females in the QE2 Cup haven't got the greatest of record. As I said, only the one win from 12 goes for the ladies in the QE2. So Nuovo record and Rising Romance will be looking to break that trend. And both arrive here in terrific form. There's a brief look there, as we can see on screen, of Chautauqua. You must have been impressed with his performance in the TJ, John.
Well, he can't not be. I mean, you guys do your sprinting very well. Of course, when we were watching the Alcos sprint there in Dubai the other week, hoping and crossing our fingers for good runs from some of our horses here in Hong Kong. And of course, Peniophobia did run quite well, but Buffering, who, let's not forget, was last time he ran up against Chautauqua, was quite substantially beaten. Just shows what a strength and depth the Australians have when it comes to the sprinters. And Chautauqua is very much at the top of the tree. International rating there of 1-2-1, winner of 10 of his 16 races, which at the sprint division as well is even more of a more meritorious effort. I think he's going to be very, very tough to beat. And just great to have him here.
Absolutely, and it's great to have all concerned with Chautauqua here in Hong Kong. We're going down to Edward Sadler, who's with the trainer.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brett. I've got Michael Hawkes with me. Michael, great to have you here, and also great to have Chautauqua here.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and we're looking forward to it.
How's the horse settled into Hong Kong?
He settled in really well. He's taken a couple of days to acclimatise, and he's really starting to get back on top of his game now. You saw this morning he's canned around nice and strong, and he looks well above himself, and he's feeling good. So all systems are really good at the moment, and we're looking forward to it.
This is his first big trip. Were there any concerns about the travel with him?
No, not really. Obviously, we wanted to come in last December and it didn't work out for us. But, this is a new challenge for him. And we've travelled horses here before, obviously. But, we wanted to do this for a while. Obviously we could have done it a lot earlier, but we wanted to really do it at home first before we started to really travel him overseas and internationally. So, as good a horse as he is, he's very good at home, but obviously we want to see how good he is, obviously, in other parts of the world. So, look, we're here. He's travelled well. We're very happy, and I can't fault him at the moment.
Work-wise, what's the plan between now and Sunday week?
Yeah, he'll probably have a gallop on Friday, and all going well, he'll have another serious hit out probably on the following Tuesday in readiness for Sunday's meet. But we just really wanted to get him out here and just have a look first. He won't do a massive amount on Friday, but his next serious gallop will be on the Tuesday and in readiness for Sunday. So, and then obviously we'll taper off to towards the end of the week, and hope he's nice and bouncy and bright and ready to go.
Of course, your family and yourself have been involved with some terrific horses and terrific sprinters throughout your time. Where does Chautauqua line up?
Oh, look, he definitely rates up there with the best sprinters we've ever had. He's in a class of his own. He's an elite horse. Him and Winks, their performances obviously in Sydney were outstanding, and to do what this horse really did and get back and hit the line solid, I don't think any horse anywhere in the world that day would have made any difference to him. But he does amazing things. He does do a bit of a Harry Houdini. He can do something that probably other horses aren't able to do. And look, we've had a lot of good horses, from Lonrose to Octagonals to All Too Hards. But in saying that, he's probably the best sprinter we've had anything to do with. He's only lightly raced. He's 5-year-old. He's got a lot of years ahead of him, hopefully. Buffering's 8 and still winning Group 1s overseas, and hopefully our blokes there as well doing it at the same age.
We look forward to speaking to you closer to the time, but thanks for talking to us this morning, Michael.
No, thanks a lot. Happy to be here, and hopefully everything's good.
Thank you, Edward. Speaking there with Michael Hawkes here. Great to have the team here, and great to see him out this morning at Chautauqua. And I get the feeling, John, just listening to what Michael was saying there, he is a horse that can do he's got that little X factor. He can do those things out of the box. I remember back to the Premier Bowl earlier on this year when we saw Abel Friend return over the sprint, and he did something out of the box that day in similar fashion to what potentially could be expected from Chautauqua. So if he's able to produce a performance like he did in the TJ Smith and like Abel Friend did in the Premier Bowl, it's going to be a very memorable race.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I've never seen this horse in the flesh, of course, coming as I do from the northern hemisphere as opposed to the south, and it'll be great to see him. And he's got still a nice little bit of time to acclimatise as well between now and the big race in a couple of weekends' time. Yeah,
there's no doubt the next sort of 10 days will be crucial to how he performs. The first trip overseas for him, how he settles in. He's a little bit warm this morning, but it is a humid morning, and we'll be very eager to see what he does on the track tomorrow. As Michael mentioned, he'll be out again, and then next Tuesday for a decent hit out too. So hopefully it's a nice, smooth preparation for Chautauqua and all concerned as he heads towards the Chairman's Sprint Prize coming up on Sunday week. We haven't seen Buffering this morning at this stage, so he's probably having a morning off by the sounds of it, but hopefully we'll see him tomorrow morning on our live webcast here at the Sha Tin Racecourse. We are just focusing on Lovely Day, who's completed his work this morning. He's done a fair bit of walking. He's had a fairly decent gallop on the turf, and the Japanese, from my experience, both here and in Singapore, they do walk their horses a lot, and he's having a fairly decent walk before he winds down proceedings this morning. Lovely Day. There's still a few horses to arrive here in Hong Kong as well. I don't believe Morris is here yet, and Safety Check as well, but they should be arriving any tick of the clock. We haven't seen Bow Creek out this morning at this stage. Morris will arrive on the 24th. So he'll be here on Sunday, and Safety Check arrives the day before. So next week when we do our live webcast on Thursday and Friday morning, we'll get a decent look at those two gallopers. And obviously Morris is a great draw card, John. What he did here in the mile on International Week was simply outstanding.
Certainly was, and it was a really terrific race. Had plenty of depth to it. It's a race that's worked out pretty well from a form perspective, and yeah, it's going to be great to have him here. It's interesting that they're not going to leave too much time in terms of bringing him over here to actually running him in the race, but they're obviously pretty convinced that the travelling from Japan is not going to be a problem.
All right, well, we're winding down here on our live webcast from the Sha Tin Racecourse this morning. The Audemars Piguet QEII Cup is the feature coming up on Sunday. It's a magnificent 2 weeks, 10 days here in Hong Kong as we, of course, get into the latter stages of our racing season here in Hong Kong. The weather is starting to warm up. The racing's been hot all year and it will continue to be so as we head towards the Audemars Piguet QEII Cup on Sunday, and then the Chairman's Sprint Prize and the Champions Mile the following week. The all-important barrier draw for the QE2 will be done today at Isola, which is in the IFC building in Central. I believe that will take place around lunchtime, 12 to 12:30. And all important, John, as we know, over the 2,000 metres.
Certainly is. Yeah, I spoke to Mark Richards about this yesterday, and I said, "What time's the barrier draw?" He just said lunchtime. So there you go. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of food to be had as well, and it's going to be a very nice event. And he'll be in charge. And yes, 2,000 metres is very important, especially when you've got such a competitive field here as well, and there's not a huge amount form-wise between a lot of them, and any little advantage that can be taken has to be taken. And yeah, if you've got a horse that likes to go forward in this race, to get a good inside barrier will definitely help.
Well, you look like you're on the fang a little bit, John. You haven't had your breakfast this morning, but the food is awaiting you downstairs. Excellent. I might accompany you down there, and I have no doubt Edward Sadler's already on his way.
He's reserved a table.
I have no doubt that has taken place, and we'll go down along with everybody here on course and enjoy some breakfast and chat about what we've seen here this morning at Sha Tin. Hopefully you've enjoyed listening and watching our live webcast of our Trackwork session this morning here at Sha Tin. It will continue again tomorrow at around about the same time, when we look forward to updating you on all the information from the barrier draw, along with the schedule for tomorrow's Trackwork here at Sha Tin. But for now, we'll say a very good morning. Thanks for your company.
See you tomorrow.